because I'm trying to live a life with the person that no longer exists. Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Product of a Strong Woman. Thank you so much for your time and most importantly, your presence. Now, I took a nice long pause. It feels like a long pause. Honestly, it was not expected after my birthday, which I did the last episode on my birthday practices. I had so many ideas, and out of nowhere, I just felt this really yearning desire to just pause. And I want to start off actually by sharing that part in regards to how do we know the difference between taking a pause or a break? And actually even just saying that, right? I didn't even think about that until through my meditations, which I share many times. I meditate when I work out and just goes very deep when I go to the sauna afterwards. And when I encounter this very still silence and the need to take a pause, I was very upset on I'll be honest, I'm vulnerable on myself. I kept, saying, are you being lazy? Why are you procrastinating? Are you just using another excuse? But I have been working for a very long time now on my intuition, how to feed it, how to nurture it. And that requires to have inner battles within my mind and also what I really need at that moment. And trust, huge trust. So as the time was coming and I was feeling this need to have silence and just a moment of pause, I heard there's a difference between a pause and a break. And I never really stopped to think about that. And that, I would say, is the first step to even understanding, am I really taking a moment because I'm procrastinating, or am I doing this because I really truly need this time to sit still and do a hard work, which is the emotional work. So the pause and the break. Think of something even more severe, or not severe, but more intense, like a break in a relationship. You completely disconnect because something feels really overwhelming. You're confused whether you want to continue a relationship or not, right? A pause, in the other hand, a pause requires for stillness. I don't feel overwhelmed. I don't feel like my energy is running on high. I need to take a break, but yet I am in love with what I'm doing. I just need to sit still to process everything that's moving so fast. And honestly, this is one of the benefits of when you really truly have that trust within yourself that you have to build, just like you build trust with other people, with a job, with a circumstance. It also takes time to build trust with yourself. And as you build trust with yourself, then you can truly hear your inner voice. Most people call it our higher self, right? And that is something I've worked on. And as I mentioned, there's a huge difference. So if you are someone like me that struggles taking a pause, first question, do I need a pause? Am I in love with what I'm doing? I just need to sit because there's so much going on with even like the ideas that are coming through and all these other things. Or is it that I feel overwhelmed? I'm questioning what I'm doing and I need a break, right? And if it's a break, then that takes even consideration. Why do I need to take a break for this, right? And really dive deep into that. It's a huge difference. So I want to start off with that huge difference between pause and break. And now, during this time that I took a pause as well, because holidays was coming along and so forth, I went to go visit my brother in North Carolina. And I rented a car and we went with my kids to the city and we ran into this Fayetteville Art Center. And as soon as I stepped into this art center, I literally stepped into a journey. If you've ever gone into an art exhibition, most of the times the artist will have a theme or something. You can tell right away what they were going through or something really tied to a concept. And as I mentioned, I walked in and for some reason, my eyes just went to the left, as though I really wanted to look from the left to the right, clockwise, right? And as I did that, I truly felt, as I mentioned earlier, this journey. And for me as a woman, then again, this whole exhibition, it's women painted in different stages. I truly felt life and death of a woman, the journey. And I'm not just talking about literal life, birthing, baby, and dying, but the many times that women go through initiations and also descents, the ending of something. And I was just overwhelmed with gratitude, with this emotion. And I looked in the middle of the back as I was turning around, and the name of this exhibition was called, because it finished already, Metamorphosis. And you could also see that it's a butterfly. A lot of the pictures too, butterfly was huge on this artist's paintings. And I was just in awe with what I felt. Now, the reason why I'm sharing this is because also, I mentioned in my last podcast, again, build trust with yourself. And sometimes you end up somewhere that you need to be, not where you want to be, to learn specific lessons. And when we try to avoid those things by asking for advice so someone can tell us don't do certain things, then we might be skipping out on certain lessons. So as I mentioned in my podcast, the last one with the birthday practices, I do for the past 5-6 years now, I would say 6 years, 7 years, most, I do a meditation during that time where I really am receptive and open to hear what is it that my life that year is going to work on. What is it that this journey that I'm going to go on is going to take me on? And it's not that I choose the word. It's not that I, look for synchronicities per se too much, because sometimes that could be overwhelming. But I just allow it to just, what is it that doesn't feel so much like it needs to move, but just sit still within me. Like, what am I hearing? And this year, I honestly, when I was, again, working out, that's like my place, I heard stages. And to be completely honest and vulnerable with you, when I heard stages, I was kind of like a little kid with their arms crossed and thinking like, really? Like, I don't want to start from scratch, right? And as I kept moving and working out, then I heard stages has no ages. And then right there, I was thinking like, oh my goodness, that is so true. Like, anytime we begin a stage doesn't necessarily mean we're starting from the beginning, meaning that we have no experience, no nothing to bring up upon in this journey, right? But, and then when I went to this exhibition and I saw this whole thing with the butterfly and metamorphosis, I was like, wow, this just blew my mind, because I felt at peace. It was this peace. Well, not only did I feel peace in this art exhibition, but I felt heard, I felt seen. I felt like I didn't have to speak with my mouth, but I literally could just speak with my emotions at that moment. Like, someone heard me. And so I wanted to share this part in regards to, what it requires to go through stages. And I mentioned earlier, we go through it many, many, many times as women. And now, in this episode, I really wanted to talk about the concept of when we're going through an initiation and a descent, right? What is actually happening? And are we actually conscious that there's an ending occurring? And how are we honoring an ending? And how are we honoring an initiation, something new? Now, in this also break I took, I read a book called The Heroine Journey, which I'm actually which I'm going to go on social media. If you're interested, I will put a link below. I'm going to do like a little book club once a month. If you're interested, you don't have to do it every single month. But if that month, I'm going to share the book that I'm going to be working on. And if you're interested in that month, you could let me know. I'll send you a Zoom link, and I'm going to be doing like a little quick book review. And I would love to hear also, as it is in a book club, to hear other women's perspectives. So the book that I read this month, and I'm going to read it again actually, is called The Heroine Journey, A Woman's Quest for Wholeness. And it's by Maureen Murdoch. Now, I truly feel, and I know it's going to be such a heavy recommendation, but I honestly think that every woman should read this book at least once. And this is not a book about what to do, but rather to remember who you are, your being. And it's actually through the stories of mythology as well. Now, mythology is the study of stories, myths. As we know, myths does not mean that it's real, right? But it was a community during that time that was trying to share a truth, not the truth, but a truth, right? And this is how we hear Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology, different continents, right? Different areas, different cultures that they share their mythology. Now, with this book, the main concept of this book she actually goes into stages that every woman goes through when they begin the journey, their heroine's journey to find themselves, right? And prior to this book, there's a book, a very popular book. It's called The Hero's Journey. And she went to talk to the author, and he had like an event and so forth. And she asked, I see that this hero's journey is meant for male men. And what do you think about the woman? Do you think she also has a journey? And this is not in a way of being defensive, but it was more of curiosity, right? Because it's a really good book as well. And he's actually mentioned that he did not believe that women had a journey, that they were the prize per se, right? Men have a journey to reach the woman, but the woman just needs to remember that she doesn't need a journey. She is where she's supposed to be. So this did not sit well with her. And hence, thank God it did not sit well with her, because this is why this book was born and created, right? And I want to share just like the stages that she goes. And as we all know, stages does not mean that we're going to experience them at the same time or how long it might take. But the importance of this is that when you are reaching a stage, it is truly understanding and just being conscious that you're in it, right? You're in it. And it's easy to say when we're in a happy moment or a sad moment, but really understanding what does that moment also imply, what is going on around us, right? So in the heroine's journey, she has the stages that a woman, when she begins her journey. And the first thing that she goes through it's actually 10 steps, right? I'm not going to go through all of them, but I will give you like the main core ones that at least really took me into just in awe and understanding the magnificence of being, I'm not sure that's a word, but of being a woman, right? And then it actually starts with the separation from the feminine. So the heroine's journey begins in that. And when she talks about this part, it's basically the concept of when we actually separate, what are we rejecting in other women? That is actually a reflection of what we are rejecting within ourselves, right? So then after that, she goes through other stages. And then the one that also, that made me kind of stop, and although all of them are amazing, it's basically the initiation and descent to the goddess. Now, this is when we go into mythology, deep into mythology. And me loving and being, I don't want to say obsessed, but maybe yes, it's an obsession of women, of understanding the life of a woman, different journeys of different women's lives. It was bound for me to run into mythology, which I have heard of, and I have, especially Egyptian, that's my favorite. But now actually I've expanded because of everything I've been learning. But she goes into mythology. And the beautiful story about this one, it is the story of Inanna, the goddess Inanna. Now, Inanna comes from Mesopotamian time. And this is one of the first civilizations that there's record of. Not the first, because we're not, everything cannot be determined that it is for sure, right? But from the perspective of archaeology, of what they have recovered, this is the first known civilization. And now, during this time, the most beautiful part about this that I learned personally was that we have the first writer, the first author, and they were found through the clay tablets, that it was written by a woman. Yes, a woman. And she writes, her name is Eduhuana, and she was a priestess. Yes, a priestess. And she was actually writing to Inanna, the goddess Inanna. So the first known archaeological-wise deity that was praised, right? It was a goddess. And now Inanna, she is known as the goddess of heaven, war, love. And as you probably heard of Athena and Venus and so forth, Inanna is basically the foundation of the many goddesses we know now, right? Because of patriarchy, because of many changes throughout the time, throughout centuries and all these years, women were not longer seen as women that take leadership positions in the spiritual world. So now her whole demeanor changes. The way she looks, the way she is talked about is completely different. But the foundation is Inanna. She's a goddess of war, love, earth. And basically, she is actually a very courageous woman. And she decides to descend and to go to the underworld. And her sister actually is the goddess of the underworld. And she goes really deep into that mythology. And that is basically I would say the first step when a woman realizes that who I identified as no longer fits into my current present. And that's when you know you're going through a descent, when you know it's going to be like a dark time. Example, like a relationship is ending. First and foremost, if a relationship is ending, that means that the person who you were at the beginning is no longer the same woman that is looking to end a relationship, right? She sees different, she perceives different, but there's such a resistance to understanding this. And that is when she talked about the descent, right? Now, after this, such a beautiful part too, it is the healing the mother-daughter split. Now, there's another part, another stage, but again, I'm going to the very pinpoint some that are really important, I think, in a woman's life, although all of them are. But for me, the healing the mother-daughter split. Now, in this section, it is the moment that the woman realizes she's an extension of her mother. And what I mean by that, basically she says, on the archetypal level, the son carries for the mother the image of her inner quest. But the daughter is the extension of her very self, carrying her back into the past and her own youth, and forward to the promise of her own rebirth into a new personality, into the awareness of the self. Before experiencing a rebirth, I felt the chill cold of death. Now, when I was reading more into this section, basically, with a male, when a woman has a son, he is not a woman, right? So therefore, she represents the image of what a woman's quest is, what a woman is like, her emotions, what is she, right? He has the image of her. But when a woman has a daughter, she is not just the image, she's an extension of her because she is a woman. So she sees a reflection, especially when we're very young, very little, right? She is the reflection of who a woman is. Therefore, it's a reflection of who I am. And then we start to meet resistance as we get older and we have our own beliefs, our own thoughts. And we are trying to separate. We're trying to break from what we thought as a child that this is who I'm supposed to be, rather than I am my own person. And there's where you meet resistance, right? And in that moment, basically, it's very difficult because the woman has to actually feel a death almost, right? But in my personal journey, I feel now, having gone through my own difficult trial with my own relationship with my mom, and I would definitely say that the day that I felt my own personal death with the separation of my mom was definitely the day where this podcast was born. Basically, the day I had a very difficult time. It was a very big conflict, and I went running, usual working out. And when I was running, I just heard the product of a strong woman. And as soon as I heard that, I literally just stopped running. I sat down on the floor and I said, how can I be strong if I feel so weak? That right there is the separation of who I thought I was for so long. I felt like this raw, almost like a surgery, like just split from my mother, right? Back then it felt very painful. But looking back now, I realize it's not that I'm separating from my mother. I'm now connecting with the woman, but I'm separating from the attachments of the beliefs that I believed when I was a child, right? So now I have my own concept of what strength is, right? It's not what my mom showed me per se. Yes, there are some things that I do believe in strength that she carries that I completely honor. But there are some things that I no longer believe or stand for because I have different circumstances that she does. So in going over this book, like I said, and then after healing the mother-daughter split, when you actually could heal that feminine side of you. Then you heal the wounded masculine, and then you finish off in that journey by the integration of the masculine and the feminine. Now that brings me to something very important that this book, I'm pretty sure I've heard it, but this book literally made it so simple and clear. Basically, the difference between femininity, masculinity, male, and female. When we say femininity, it's characteristics. It's what we call also an archetype. It actually, archetype, I'm not going to go into it now, but it's something that basically is who started or who created this concept was Carl Jung, a psychoanalyst. And he basically, these are just characteristics of an archetype. And yes, so feminine and masculinity are archetypes. They're characteristics. They are not gender. And I think that very clear definition really helps in the understanding that we all carry feminine and masculine traits, hence mother, father. We say, oh my goodness, you have this characteristic as your dad. You have this characteristic as your mom. Those are characteristics. I know at times when you would tell somebody, especially I've been told personally, you're very masculine when it comes to this. There's a part of me that feels like kind of defensive because it feels like, are you saying that I'm a man? Hence, right there, I'm already attaching my gender to a characteristic, right? So she makes that very clear. And now when you're able to heal, you begin by healing the feminine, then you can actually heal the wounded masculine. And she goes into detail with all of this. But as I mentioned, I highly recommend this book to just every single woman. But I mentioned I'm going to make the link down there, and I'm going to go on social media on Instagram because I will be inviting women to read this book for the month of March. Now, as I mentioned with this book, you will definitely learn more about Inanna, the goddess who decided to go to the underworld. And now going into her story in regards to, we're talking about stages and talking about how we have to be, not have to, but our attempt to be aware of when we're initiating something and when we're ending something, so we can honor it and release it with love. And we could enter a new phase in our lives as women, not holding on to the past, but welcoming, because we have completely honored an ending. So with Inanna's story, I just want to go one more detail in regards to her, the goddess, her story, her mythology. Is basically when she descends to the underworld, she must pass through 7 gates. And once she reaches those 7 gates, but the 7 gates, she is required to let go of a royal garment, basically stripping her from her royalty, stripping her away from her identity, right? She is a goddess. But as she reaches to the end to meet her sister, Ereshkigal, basically now she's not a goddess. She is completely stripped from who she identifies herself as, right? And when we decide that we're going to have an ending, right? Whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, a career, right? You go into career thinking like, oh my God, I'm so excited. This is what I want to do. And then you get there and you realize like, wow, I didn't do this for the right reasons. Then who was I? Who did I identify as? Because then now I have to release that person, right? Release those identities in order for me now to step into this new journey. Now, prior to actually Inanna going to the underworld, she did tell one of her loyal servants that she was going, and if she did not return within 3 days, to let the gods know, to help her, to save her, right? But which her loyal servant did, and she went to ask for help because Inanna was not back. Because once she reached the 7 gates, her sister actually put her to die because she's in the underworld. She was not supposed to be in the underworld. And once she was put to death, basically, Ereshkigal basically put her, and it's going to be a little harsh, but put her on a stick and allowed her body to rot. As she's going through this rotting process, it is literally who she was is dying. The person is going to, that if, she's saved by a God, it's not going to be the same. So actually ends up being that the father did not come and save her. She had a spouse, did not come and save her. It was another god that came, that helped, sent two creatures that were not female or male to come to the underworld. And Ereshkigal, the reason why her sister went in the first place, Inanna, was because Ereshkigal was grieving her husband had died. And these two creatures came to sit by Ereshkigal, the sister, the goddess of the underworld, to grieve with her. But they didn't speak to her. They just stood there so that she can reflect her grief, so she could feel heard and understood. Because a female will try to nurture you, will try to, really hold you. And Ereshkigal, the underworld goddess, with the death of her husband, did not want that. She wanted to feel her pain. And a male will try to do something to fix it, to fix the problem. And she didn't want that. So this god, which is the god of wisdom and water, Enlil, who sent these two creatures, is very smart, obviously, right? The god of wisdom. But he did that particularly so that Ereshkigal could just see and feel that she's being heard. And because of this, she releases her sister. These two creatures actually sprinkle life back into Inanna, and she's able to go back. Now, when she goes back, she's not the same Inanna. And this is the whole concept, right? Stages, and when we're going to start something and being aware, what are we letting go of, right? And as you become more aware of who you are releasing with love, that is when you're nurturing your intuition, when you are trusting yourself, when you are able now to no longer ask for advice continuously, but just listen to your own self, and the answers are within you, right? So highly recommend. And now, in going back to the exhibition with the butterfly. Now, as we know, the butterfly starts off as a caterpillar, then it goes into a chrysalis, and then it becomes the butterfly, right? And I had gone to a science center with my daughter, and in the pictures that this artist shows, it's so beautiful. It's like a butterfly into a woman. It is those stages, right? So basically, when the caterpillar, the egg goes into a caterpillar, its identity is, I need to eat. I need to do lots of physical work. I need to eat, right? To get big. But once it gets big enough to go into its chrysalis mode, now what happens? In this mode of the butterfly, it's actually quite, I'm gonna say gruesome, but intense. It actually liquefies itself. All its muscles, it has everything. It's an enzyme inside, but it does protect its main organs that it's going to need to breathe. So like respiratory, things that they're going to need to survive, but not the muscles. Everything liquefies in order to become the butterfly. And in this stage, now, one of the things that really caught my attention, I remember in this science center, was that the person was telling the kids, do not touch the chrysalis, do not try to help it, even if you see that it's moving, struggling, and so forth. You can look at it, but don't touch it. And when we asked why, he said, the moment you try to help this chrysalis come out of its cocoon, it will die. It will not make it. And the reason why is because all of its liquid, all of its blood, important, to survive, it needs to, in that push to get out of its cocoon, which is actually its own layer, the outer layer, it's a hard layer, it needs to break through, and that pressure will move the blood to its wings to allow it to have strength and fly, and now be a butterfly. How amazing is it that even in nature we see the importance of literally the beginning stages of, okay, this is who I was, now all that part has to die. And when I talk about this intensity, right, I am talking about and I'll give an example to make it more simple. At least I'll give my own personal example. Me, prior to having the moment that I said out loud from my mouth, I don't feel strong, all my life. I was in my early 20s, all my life. I consider myself to be strong, one, and I identified as being a strong woman because I wanted to be admired by my mother. I wanted to be like my mother, right? But I met a point where I was in a relationship. I was just evolving to another area of my life, and that person was not going to fit that lifestyle. I didn't need to fight. I didn't need to have to struggle or anything. I just needed to be receptive. I wasn't even receptive. And that's a feminine trait, allowing receptivity. And again, I mentioned, right, it's not that I'm a female or a male. I'm talking about the characteristics. So even a male has the female characteristics to be receptive to love or to the woman that he meets or a career and so forth, right? So when I'm talking about this intense time is I felt so vulnerable the day I said, I don't feel strong. Because then now it was, I guess, my first descent, right? Of saying, oh my goodness, I feel like I have no protection. Because if I'm weak, anybody could take advantage of me, right? But now I had to build what strength was for me under my circumstances, right? Yes, I migrated, but I didn't migrate like my mom. She had 3 kids. I had no kids. I had the opportunity to go to college. I had the opportunity to do so many things. So my strength is not, it's not going to look like hers. And that doesn't mean that she's not going to value me or be proud of me. So yes, wanted to share that in regards to even the concept of a butterfly. Now I wanted to, the last thing I want to say in regards to actually the descent. Another podcast I highly recommend, it's Woman and Mythology by Maria Souza. And she recently had a guest called Christina Drizza. And she talked about how the descent is not a punishment, but it's actually an initiation. And a lot of the times when we're going into, we are aware that we're going into this dark moment in our lives, we are trying to rush through it or we're trying to avoid it. And in reality, it is literally stalling an initiation to a new life. And what happens, I mean, this is just my concept, when many times I've tried to rush that process or completely avoid that process. And how I did it is I would just have a really good cry, and then I release some of that emotion, and then I was ready to keep going my life. And well, what happens? I'm gonna keep going to the same cycles, same patterns, feeling overwhelmed, feeling like something's not right, feeling like I don't even know who I am anymore because I'm trying to live a life with the person that no longer exists, right? Meaning like this younger Lizbeth does not fit in the life for this 20, 30-year-old Liz, right? It doesn't fit. So every time I'm about to experience something amazing or I'm working towards something amazing, I would meet a wall and then feel lost, right? So hence she says, when we are going to step into that moment, right, where we feel lost, where we feel why I don't know what I'm doing in my life or what am I supposed to do, let's see this moment not as a punishment, right? Because it might be hard. We might see other women around us that they're in different times of their lives, right? It's not a punishment, but an initiation. And now one of the art pieces that the artist Stephany Placencio had that to me is like so beautiful. I actually ended up purchasing 2 of her pieces, just beyond beautiful, is that when it's a woman coming out of her chrysalis, and in that chrysalis when she comes out, there's so many more chrysalises around her. And what does that say? That when you go through a descent, right, and then you are, again, not a punishment but an initiation, and you come out and you realize now the new person can meet and connect in that reality you're trying to create, and it feels like home again. You can now connect with other women that are going through those moments. Now we can connect as a community with women. And I think that is the importance of the individuality, which was very hard for me. I thought it was very selfish at one point in my life, but really taking care of yourself primarily, because then you're aware that you are now part of a community and that you can help other women because you've gone through it, right? It's like if you're a mom. Like now that I'm a mom and a mom of 2, when a woman has a baby, I'm like, that's amazing, that's beautiful, but I'm very focused on the woman. I'm actually really intrigued. Are you okay? How is your body feeling? How are you emotionally feeling? Do you feel supported? Because I know the baby's gonna be okay. Like the baby's overwhelmed with love, right? It's so much going on. But that's how you know that you are connected to your dark moments and that you know what it was like. And now you can help another woman. So finishing off all of this, it's just I really wanted to basically start off because I really wanted to honor this pause. I think for many women that are very active, very movement, going, it's very hard. It's very hard when you are called to just pause and sit still. And like me, I was being very mean and harsh to myself, and it made me realize other areas that I needed to work on. So I wanted to finish up by saying now that I already have my next guest. We already actually had the conversation. Her name is Stephany Placencio, and she actually is the artist of the exhibition Metamorphosis. And this is going to be such a beautiful just episode. And also it is my first complete Spanish episode. I'm very grateful for her because a lot of the time, I think many people that love to listen to music, art, and so forth, we're very wanting to know the person's story. And she allowed us to come into her space and listen to her story. Now, if you've struggled with postpartum, because she will be talking about postpartum and just different stages of a woman's life, I highly recommend you listen to this episode, and I will be linking all her information. She currently has an exhibition going on. If you're in North Carolina, I highly recommend you go with a group of friends. If you have a girl, a daughter, it was so lovely. So as this being my first podcast for the year, honestly, what I mostly wish for you this year, or any woman, all women, is that this year we're no longer searching for what to do. Yes, it can help us, but truly try and have the curiosity to remember who you are. And I think mythology and learning about the history of women, BCE, Mesopotamia time, go all the way back, and remembering who and what we were and what we are, it will truly completely help you identify to who you are now. And literally will help you no longer seek so much for help, but just listen to people's stories, read, and feel it in your body of the remembering of who you are. So have a beautiful year. I will be sharing the next episode soon, and have a beautiful day. Bye.